Thank you, Michael, for your kind introduction. This is going to be a bit of a tour de force. It's very difficult to talk about the whole in 5 minutes, to change your mindsets, explain how we solve our problems and how we are developing a vision and get it into action. That's in a summary, in a nutshell, what I want to do. If you don't get some of the details, relax. I want you to get the big picture. The challenge I've set myself, or that drives my life, is expressed by that one statement made by the G20 summit in March 2009. We know what caused the finance crisis, but we don't know what to do about it. Now, if we are replacing the word finance crisis with climate change, poverty, crime, terrorism, unemployment, population explosion, you name it, you've got the picture. And we saw it yesterday. We are well on the way to make things worse and worse and worse and worse. And there are various driving forces. Now, to summarize what I'm going to say, my particular solutions, in inverted commas, to the problems, what we need is a worldview that can deal with complexity. We need to change our future course dramatically. And we need a new thinking about governance. I will make myself very unpopular by saying I don't believe our current democratic model works. Now, in a nutshell, what is the answer to these three? The new worldview, system thinking. And I will explain a little bit about it. To change our future course, we need ideal future redesign in virtually every area of our life. And we need stakeholder governance. Now, these three themes are interweaving throughout my presentation. Let's look at the worldview first. What are some of the fundamental problems with our worldview? You heard Michael already say it yesterday. The logic of the problem is not the logic of the solution. We know what brought about our education problems, our finance crisis. We know what makes us sick, but we don't know, and there are different forces involved that create health, that create a desirable education system, that create a new financial system. We need a different logic. One of the problems is that the problem does not contain the solution. If we are analyzing the problem, we won't find the solution there. If we're analyzing disease, we won't find health. If we're analyzing your unhappy marriage, we won't find happiness there. If we analyze our education system, we don't necessarily know what the ideal system would look like, which doesn't mean that there are not elements already there that work, the good news, so to speak, that need to be multiplied. But that's only part of the story. The other part of the story we need to envision. And more of the same reinforces the problem. Now, if we don't know what to do, we are throwing more of the same strategies at the problem. So we threw trillions at the finance crisis in absence of knowing what to do. And I must say the G20 were quite honest about that. They said, we don't know if it will work. Now, in my circle of acquaintances, I know two persons. The one worked for a small bank specializing in derivatives. That bank was since bought up by one of the largest banks in Europe with the express purpose of developing derivative capacity that they didn't have before. My second friend has been headhunted from London into a South African bank to start a derivative department because we didn't have that. I think, as humanity, we are collectively mad. Problems have multiple causes. Now, every dinner discussion you go to and any issue that comes up, be it crime or whatever, somebody would say, we need more police or we need more this. Right? Well, as a system thinker, we say, yes, what else? Now, if we are taking the issue of poverty, my particular personal thing, I always bring up the population explosion because it's an unpopular thing and I know how important it is. Somebody else says education crisis, energy shortage, inappropriate governance, crime, unemployment, climate change, corruption. inequality, health crisis, and so on. They all co-produce poverty. In fact, poverty is the emergence of our systems not working. We have a system thinking concept saying emergence. So all our woes emerge from the interaction of systems that don't or that produce that kind of outcome. Now, we could take any one of those and put it in the middle. For example, the education crisis. And then all the other cofactors that we have are equally true in co-producing the education crisis or violence or anything like that. In other words, issues are interrelated, and interrelating problems make each other worse. Now, I have listed the same issues in that way. So if we look at climate change, now climate change is going to make every one of those issues worse. Likewise, poverty, inequality infrastructure, violence, energy shortage, unemployment, education crisis, health crisis. What's the true problem? The true problem is not each of those. The true problem sits here. This is the breeding ground of the black swans that we have been talking about yesterday. This is where they are emerging. Now, to make matters worse, interrelating problems make each other worse, and even worse than that, solutions in one area can give rise to problems in another area, creating vicious circles. One example, poverty. We have heard yesterday a lot of poverty figures, and what we are then so proud about, yes, we can do a lot in terms of economic development. So the more poverty we have, the more economic development we need. So far, so good. But the truth is, the more economic development we have, the more we impact negatively on climate change. And the more climate change we have, the more it impacts back on poverty. A perfect vicious circle. Now, all these orange arrows that we saw between those issues can be translated into vicious circles. I hope I have made my point that we need a worldview that can deal with complexity and that can help us out of those traps. There's one more fundamental problem with our worldview that we need to look at, and that is that the current system has momentum. What we mean by that is it carries on. We can't change big systems from one moment to another. Our existing strategies, our existing structures, our existing policies, our existing systems carry on in the future until we change them. We call that habit, default. And that tends to get worse over time, as I showed, because of the interrelationship of various problems, and also because times move on. What works now may not be appropriate 10 years from now. The education system, which was making sense, or the curriculum 10 years ago, may not make sense 10 years from now. So because of that, things tend to get worse. And we don't notice gradual deterioration, which Bärbel said so nicely yesterday. We can ignore the demographic trends for a year and for another year, but in the long term, it catches up with us. So there's a gradual deterioration. Compare this year to last year, it's not so much worse. But fast track 20 years down the line, and it is much worse. We have a current situation. It doesn't matter what system we are looking at, current education system, current health system, South Africa, or whatever system. The current situation was brought about by past decisions. This is our timeline here. So our past policy, our past buildings, our past behavior has given rise to the situation as it is now. Now that situation carries on in the future, thanks to its momentum, as I said earlier, to give rise to a series of current futures. That's what we heard yesterday. The whole day yesterday was about current futures. An extrapolation of our current thinking into the future. And this is represented by the momentum. If we don't change the way we are thinking, this is where we end up. It may be a lower road or a higher road. There could be alternative current futures. We use forecasting to do that. It's a very useful tool. And we need to understand the current future and where it's going, because if it works, we wouldn't want to change it. And if it doesn't work, then we must fast track and know where are we headed for down the line so that we can change in time. So we have current futures scenarios, and the whole thing is based on the current logic and involves gradual deterioration.